The sun was eclipsed by the moon, the sky was purple, and there was a wasteland all around. Some monstrous screamed terribly loudly, a man holding, and I fought against this monster. The monster attacked the man, but the man was able to kill the monster with a knife. The man held his hand in the mouth of this monster, striking from the inside. However, the monster's mouth slowly closed. Still the man was able to kill the monster and survive. Then he sighed heavily and wiped his face. The man was about to say that he was finally able to kill the monster with his own hands, when suddenly someone called out to him, calling him on. Awakened, there were many people in front of him, as well as many terrifying monsters. One of the hunters asked the man what he was doing, because he must work normally and collect drops. Since he became a porter, a man in glasses and a mask called him blind, and asked if he really couldn't see the corpses. The porter became agitated and apologized. The hunters standing on the mountain turned away and called the porter useless. The man just stood there looking after them. He was unhappy about something. We then learned the story that the world changed after the discovery of the abyss. The abyss is another dimension where monsters that existed only in fantasy actually live. After the discovery of the abyss, extraordinary powers awakened, and people, and with them humanity, began to destroy monsters and conquer the abyss. Because of all this, people are now judged not by personality or effort but by their awakening rank. If you have a high rank, then you are go anti the good life. The porter meanwhile plunged his hand into the monster and pulled out a glowing purple stone. He looked at the stone with sadness, realizing that he would not see a good life, because he was just a porter carrying the things of the awakened, and who failed to awaken. It is 35 years, he understood, that until he awakened he would not be able to live their lives. The porter turned around and shouted that he had collected all the loot here. However, what he saw shocked him. All the awakened ones were dead. There was not a single living person in front of him. Those two awakened ones were also dead, although a couple of moments ago they were talking with the porter. The porter was terrified. He could not understand what had happened. He did not know how they died. Suddenly some creature said that the last enemy remained. The porter turned around and saw a huge creature with horns and many arms. This monster's eyes glowed red, and instead of a face it had a white mask. This is Asmodi, is an SSS rank monster. The porter in horror took out a knife and rushed to attack. Asmodi has extended his hand and response. A moment later the hand in which the porter was holding the knife was torn from the portery body. The porter fell to the ground and began to scream and pain. Holding his hand, the man stood up and looked at this monster in horror. Suddenly something stand him. The monster hit the man with some kind of purple blast. This charge hit the porter directly in the head. Blood began to flow from the man's forehead. He wondered what kind of death this was. The man looked at the monster and cried. The porter began to remember that his parents had died in a car accident. He also remembered being bullied at school and being ignored for the rest of his life because he was unawakened. The rape from the monster's finger wounded the man's forehead. Sitting on the ground and crying, the porter wondered whether he would really die as a porter. Before his death, he cursed this life and called himself a loser. He also began to curse out. Weakening, the man was writhing in pain. Blood was dripping from his face. The drop that was falling from it suddenly began to glow. Multi-colored spheres appeared around. All awakening conditions were satisfied. A strange creature shining with silver appeared in front of the porter. The porter was sitting at the foot of the stairs from which this creature descended. The man was shocked and did not so and what was happening. The white creature with long hair continued to approach him. The porter turned around and surprised and wanted to say that he was definitely dead. The porter turned around and saw his dead body as well as Asmodi is, but time seemed to freeze. He wondered if Asmodi is had stopped. Everything around became dim. The creature grinned and asked the shocked porter if he was surprised that someone like Asmodi is had stopped. The porter turned to this creature and asked him in surprise who he was. Smiling, the creature replied that someone was calling him a king, but the porter should not worry about that. They seemed to be in space because there were many colorful planets around them. The creature said that he should grant the porter power. The porter sat on his knees and wondered what the creature was even talking about. He also could not understand whether it was he who stopped this Modi is. Suddenly the creature said that the porter did not need to be so incredulous. The porter was shocked. Extending his hand, he said that he simply recognized the well and tenacity of the porter, and that is why he chose him. The king extended his hand and projected several planets in front of the bearer. The king said that it would be better if the porter thought that such a miracle would never happen again. The porter began to shout and ask the king to stop asking about his choice. He wondered what was going on. The king extended his hand in front of him, pointing at the porter. The king chuckled and told the porter to just wait patiently for the moment, because the day would come when he would understand everything according to the king, that he and the porter will meet again. The porter was shocked, and everything around was illuminated with a bright white light. A huge monster appeared above them, opening its mouth wide. The king said something about his key. The monster used its fire breath and incinerated everything around it. Everything lit up with a bright light. The porter found himself in the dark, but he heard a voice. The people standing above him said that he was asleep. The porter began to open his eyes with effort. The people standing above him called him names and said that he was crazy for ignoring them. They decided that they needed to wake him up. The porter have opened his eyes and immediately saw how they were going to hit him. Some guy in a shirt slapped the porter. The porter was shocked looking at this guy. This guy asked if the porter was awake. 3 school children stood in front of the porter who was about to fall. The porter recognized one of them. His name is Hex. So this boy, he said that the porter only lessons if you beat him. The hero wondered how this bully from high school ended up here hitting the hero again. Hacks, who asked him why he was silent. The hero thought that he had just been in the abyss. Hacks, who hit the hero again. Young began to remember the power that he was endowed with. Suddenly some kind of notification appeared before the hero's eyes. On the system window 8 was written that the hero's name was him. He was 19 years old and had enough rank. He wondered if this was a status window. Kim noticed the line that stated his age and wondered if he had really gone back 16 years. Meanwhile, Hacks, who continued to beat Kim. However, Kim was glad to be back in time and grinned. Kim threw back his head and left. The hooligans were shocked and could not understand what made him so happy. Hex, who took a step back and wondered what was wrong with this crazy guy sitting on the ground. Kim continued to laugh. Hex, who asked if Kim had really lost his mind. Hacks, who began calling him names and shouting that he was asking for it, but at that moment Kim attacked him. Hunch attacks in the face from such a strong blow. Hacks, who flew back. His hooligan friends were horrified. Kim smiled silently. He thought that now he too was awakened. Kim was so happy that he cried when he realized this Hex, who lay unconscious on the floor. Wiped away his tears because he understood that he had to fight. He was attacked by hooligans, who were also awakened, because one of them used fire, and the other used eyes. While attacking, they shouted that Kim was nobody, and he had gone crazy. The enemy fire, but Kim quickly dodged and prepared for a retaliatory attack. Tim hit his opponent with a powerful uppercut. He then quickly turned around and kicked the green-haired boy in the stomach. Sweat was dripping from his face. He thought that for 35 years, all his unawakened life, he had done everything he could, starting with physical training, ending with studying all the information about the abyss and its monsters. Kim also collected data on various skills, even about wrestling skills. The hooligans attack him again. However, the hero thought that he would never lose to some bullies who don't even know the basics. Kim easily punched one opponent and then sharply hit the second. Both opponents fell to the ground. Him breathed a sigh of relief, slamming his fist into his palm. Kim said that he would need to train again. Kim turned around in surprise because he heard the voice of Hexil, who was clearly very angry. Hex, who stood up from the ground. There were some strange appendages on him. He was clearly surprised that Kim was awake. Then more stones appeared on him and he angrily shouted that Kim was now a corpse. These stones on the body or Hex, whose skill stone is Hin, which strengthens the body with stone growth. Hex, who began to attack him. However, Kim was able to dodge the enemy. A second blow also missed him. Kim raised his head and looked up. At that moment, Hex, who jumped on him raising both hands and about to hit him. The impact was so strong that stones were scattered everywhere. Hex, who exuded a red or as a cloud of dust hovered around him. Suddenly Kim appeared from this cloud of dust about to attack the enemy. However, Hex, who immediately noticed him and began to turn around. As soon as Hex, who turned around, Kim immediately hit him. Blood supply otters appeared in. Kim was shocked by something. It turned out that Kim's blow did not damn the enemy, although the blow hit Hex and the face. Pax, who then asked him how he was doing, smiling easily. Kim realized that with this blow he only harmed himself. At the same moment, Hex, who attacked Kim, he flew back from such a powerful blow, but he was able to block it with both hands. Kim landing was not the softest as he fell down to the concrete. Kim was lying on the ground with a bloody face and groaning in pain. The enemy began to approach him, saying that Kim had better know his limits when it comes to acting. He also asked if Kim had finally come to his senses. Hex, who grinned arrogantly and said that Kim was a non-entity and an awakened, were continuing to approach. He is Kim. What he would do now? Would he run away again? Hex, who asked about whether Kim would continue to try with his awakening skills. However, Kim was exhausted and continued to lie on the ground. He thought about how all awakened people receive a skill and rank from F rank. Once you are almost indistinguishable from an ordinary person to S rank. When you are worthy of being called a monster, the physical abilities and skills of the awakened ones grow exponentially. Kim was annoyed that he received a predator skill and known to anyone, and also a worse wreck. He realized that there was no way he could handle Hacks, who had a C rank. Suddenly something shocked Axa. A red aura emanated from Kim, him exuding a terrifying aura, said that somehow he didn't feel like you would lose. The aura around Kim only grew and became even larger. Hex, who was shocked and wondered what it was. Hex, who was horrified and could not believe that Kim had really awakened, because he had always considered him a non-entity. Kim looked at his hand. He wondered if this was his skill as a predator. Kim felt the magic obeying him. Kim's eyes also emitted a red glow at this moment. Hex, who said that he did what was happening, but he knew for sure that everything would end if the caster was killed. With these words he attacked Kim. Kim extended his hand. At that moment it was as if they were in the mouth of some giant monster. Hex, who was sharp as the stones, began to peel off his skin. Kim stood with his hand outstretched. Something strange was happening. It was as if he was drawing strength from Hex so sudden. Kim squeezed his palm, and reed rings appeared around his hand. Hex, who began to scream in pain and horror. Gradually all the stones fell away from Hex, so he was scared. Meanwhile the people who are nearby did not notice anything. However, a huge amount of aura suddenly appeared, eclipsing everything around. A cloud of dust rose. It seems that everything is over because the aura round Kim has diminished. X, who fell to the floor, passed out. He fell right at Kim's feet. The hero was very exhausted. A lot of sweat was dripping from him. At this point the system reported that the devouring was completed. The system also reported that as a result of absorbing the target, Kim's rank changed to he suddenly stones began to appear on Kim's skin. He acquired a new skill. Kim's hand was completely covered and stones. The system has registered the stone skin skill. After that, Kim went to the infirmary. The nurse sitting there was shocked. Him brought to her 3 opponents whom he had just beaten. Kim greeted the nurses. Streams of blood flowed from his face. The nurse was shocked. After the fight, Kim carried the children, including access to the infirmary. The nurse cured Kim with her healing skills. However, of course, Kim had to lie to her. The nurse asked him how they got hurt, and Kim replied that they rolled down the stairs. He managed to persuade her to continue without further questions. Kim walked down the street and thought that he was now completely healthy, and that's great. He woke up and also got even with Hacks. But nevertheless Kim understood that there was a problem. The problem was in the predator. In this skill that him has Kim's rank, which he was unable to raise by training his entire past life, was able to change after the first battle. He thought that it might be enough rank skill, but it has the same power as a C rank skill, because it can't even absorb other people's skills. As he climbed the stairs, Kim wondered why this guy, the Key King, gave him such power, and why he regressed. Kim, looking forward, decided that in the end there was only one thing left for him. He stood and looked at his house. At the same time he thought that he needed to learn more about the predator. Kim looked at the house with a smile and said that he had not been home for a long time. He remembered that when his parents died he stayed with his uncle. A wide smile appeared on Kim's face. Entering the house, Kim said that his uncle would be late, and therefore he wanted to look for information about such skills. However, upon entering, Kim was surprised. He saw 3 bandits in front of him and a boy sitting on the floor. This boy recognized Kim and was surprised that he came here. Kim asked this boy H1 why he was not at school. Kim suddenly remembered something. He looked at the overturned box of money. Kim remembered that even before his regression, H1 wanted to make friends with other bandits, so he took all the money from the house and got into trouble. It stood up and asked H1 who he was. H1 began to hesitantly explain something to them. H1 then began to whisper something into the ear of the blonde bandit. Hoops placed his hand on his head. Kim remembered that this situation from the past happened today. One of the bandits said that he was wondering who it was, but it turned out that it was the Wayne's cousin. Kim looked at them warily. The blonde bandit took a step towards Kim and told him to score and get out if he didn't want to get hit in the face. The bandit added that they would take what they needed and leave. He stroked Kim's head and called him on. Awakened, Kim looked at him calmly. He then smiled and said that was great. Kim said that he just wanted to try it. The bandit wanted to ask what Kim wanted to experience, but Kim immediately began to attack him. Kim hit the bandits so hard that he fell to the ground. The bandit groaned in pain as he lay on the floor. The other bandits, as well as each weighing, were shocked. The blonde bandit looked warily at Kim, who apparently was about to attack him again. Him pointed his palm at the bandit, and in the meantime he asked him to stop. Kim, standing over the band and pointing his palm at him, tried to use as predator skill. Kim smiled in anticipation of absorbing the enemy skill. However, he was shocked because the system reported that the predator function was not available. The bandit looked at that surprise him with incomprehension. The hero began to get nervous. He once again pointed his palm of the enemy and tried to use the skill, but nothing worked for him. He wondered why the skill and activate. At this moment the enemy let out a dissatisfied exclamation and attacked Kim, who had not yet had time to understand why his skill was not activated. The bandit hit Kim in the face while calling him a crazy worm. Kim fell to the floor. The bandit pointed his hand at Kim and shouted for him to die. One of the bandits used the rank skill chains, and the other used the poisonous heal. That blonde bandit used the bleeding skill. They simultaneously attack him with 3 skills. The hero was terrified and didn't know what to do. He just watched and waited. Attend to be awakened. He also said that Kim doesn't know her place at all. Suddenly something shocked him. In the purple smoke, Kim's silhouette was visible, from which a red glow emanated. The system notified him that skill usage had been detected. A large amount of red or appeared around Kim, as well as a huge creature. Just like last time, the system notified him that chain, poise and bleed skills were confirmed. Thanks to mystical power, Kim gained resistance. Kim's hand began to become covered in stones. He said that the skill suddenly didn't work and then neutralized the enemy skills. The bandits did not understand what happened. The blonde bandit was terrified. Kim immediately attacked him using his stone skin skill, having smashed the bandit's face. Kim said that he didn't know what was happening, but this skill was terribly strong. Some time passed them. Kim returned to normal. He stood at the window and looked at the bandits who were lying unconscious on the floor. The hero said that he has now learned 2 things. He realized that the status window was visible only to those who were awakened. In the status window, all the information about Kim, his skills as well as his characteristics was written. Kim also realized that the status window displayed information about the awakened person, but not all of it. First, there was no shortage of mana, but the predator still did not activate. In other words, in addition to what is written, there is something other than mana in the activation conditions. Additionally, the predator's passive effect is not listed in the descript gem. It neutralizes all negative effects such as bleeding or poison. Can put his hand to his chin and thought that he would gradually be able to confirm as assumptions. However, he suddenly thought about what was much more important now. Kim looked at each wig who was lying on the floor bowing before him. Kim asked him what he was doing. H. Wang raised his head and began shouting that he, having seen the incredible sight of Kim, repented of what he had done. He nervously asked him to forgive him. Each Wayne started nodding his head and talking about how he would do whatever Kim said, even if it meant licking his shoes or barking. Kim knew that a Twain was such a fox, but he couldn't even imagine that he was such a fox. H. Wayne started barking, making him feel uncomfortable. Kim at that moment thought that the problem, however, was not H. when the city was in danger, and Kim understood that the danger lay and what would soon happen. Kim said that he would forgive a Twang, and he immediately asked in surprise if this was true. With his arms crossed and his head thrown back, Kim said that in return, however, each Wang must come with him. Meanwhile, something strange was happening in the gloomy industrial area. A sign at the entrance stated that this was a prohibited area, and entry was limited to authorized persons. Only 3 people nervously looked at some luminous object. They stood in front of the gate and realized that this was a breakthrough of the gate. The gate breaches a phenomenon where a path from the abyss suddenly opens up for monsters. If nothing is done, everything can devolve into a day and in disaster. A man and glasses and a suit said that 10 years have passed since that last disaster. According to him, that time the gate suddenly appeared and the monsters began to crawl away. The long-haired girl in the suit said that considering the monsters, if they don't do anything, disaster is only a couple of moments away. The short-haired girl was very worried and asked if the surrounding areas should be evacuated. However, the man replied that this should not be done. With his back to the portal, the man said that they had his beat-ranked barriers killed. The monsters, meanwhile, were desperately trying to break through the barrier. The man said that in addition, the rank of this gate is only C, which means that the strongest monster that can come out of it is also C rank. However, suddenly the barrier began to crack under the onslaught of monsters. The barrier was broken and the monsters burst out. The man wanted to talk about what would happen in the event of an unforeseen crisis, but the girls started shouting at him, calling him a leader. Their leader immediately turned around. He was able to kill several monsters with a kick. With the kicking knocked off the monster's head, the blonde man with glasses said that as B ranks they would be able to hold back the breakthrough. Meanwhile, H1 and Kim were running somewhere. H1 gasped of shouldn't everything be okay. Kim ran ahead of H1. H Wang recalled that Kim said that the management staff was already there, which means everything should be fine. Kim felt awkward and asked H Wang to stop calling him sir. Kim continuing to run forward said that he was right because the initial mana of this gate is at the C rank level, and the personnel who arrive there are B rank, so C rank monsters are not a hindrance to them. H. Wang was sweating profusely and nervous. He exclaimed that he said so. However, H. Wang was shocked because Kim said that it was only good if it was actually a C rank get near the gate. Meanwhile, there were many dead monsters. A blonde man's head above the monster, and looking at it thought that this was strange. The man wondered how these low-rank monsters were able to break through his B-rank barrier. Suddenly he turned around and thought that this could not be, because he felt that the mana emanating from the gate was of a rank higher than him. Once two has continued to emerge from the gate, the girl shouted to their leader that there was something inside the gate. The monsters continued to make their way. The three of them looked nervously at the barrier. Suddenly one of the monsters was still able to break through the barrier. With its roar, the man looked up, stand, and wondered what it was. The monsters completely destroyed the barrier and burst out of it, and behind the small monsters that a huge monster with large fangs. This monster with 4 red eyes and rank ogre giant the blonde man would stand. He said that this is not a C rank. A fire suddenly burst out in front of the man, just as he said in horror that it wasn't a rank. There was a strong explosion. H1 meanwhile continued to run after Kim and began to think about what would happen if Kim was right. Following Kim, H. Wang said that this was all nonsense and asked how Kim knew all this. The hero thought that this was because he had already gone through this. H. Wang exclaimed that it's not that there are no monsters, they are not even evacuating the area. Kim only replied that it was intuition. H. Wang then surprised him, continued to run calmly, and once again repeated that his intuition told him so. But H. Wang exclaimed that Kim was like, and then unexpectedly, the heroes came across a huge number of people running from monsters. People running from the monsters shouted for other people to run too, because the gate had been broken through. Kim was unperturbed, but H. Wang was so shocked that he was stupefying. Kim told trying to do what he told him to do. H. Wang turned around excitedly and asked what would happen to him. At this moment, H. Wang was even more surprised. Kim used his stone skin skill and headed towards the monsters. He said that he would sort out this abomination and would be there. Meanwhile, the city was quite quiet. A man stood and looked out the window from a high tower. The man, turning to someone, said, "That is this." Someone said, "The situation is quickly heating up." He reported that the C rank 8 breaker turned out to be a rank. According to him, it is impossible to send reinforcements since the rest are busy in the dungeons are exploring the abyss. Turning around, the man said that the only solution to the crisis now was an awakened wreck. There was someone else standing behind this man. Addressing this man, a man with a small beard said that he was their only hope and asked for help. This man had yellow eyes and brown hair. He cried his name is Unhyun Tu and his nickname is Blade of Madness. He is an rank awakened praying humans who told them to hold on, because the hero on humans who was coming to them. Its peculiarity is the 8th grader syndrome. Meanwhile, someone was fighting monsters. Then this man killed the second monster. It turned out to be Kim. He easily dealt with them. He defeated another monster and it fell to the ground. Kim pointed his hand at the fallen monster and began to use his ability. The hero used that skill and absorbed all these monsters at once. Kim realized he was right. He looked at the fatigue indicator and wondered if the predator didn't work due to fatigue. At the moment, Kim's fatigue is 52%. The hero realized that if fatigue exceeds 70%, then the skill is not activated. He began to think that most skills used mana, but that didn't mean he should only worry about it, because there is fatigue which increases if you use skills or move, and the higher the fatigue, the more the power of the skills decreases, and the heavier the body becomes. Kim continued to absorb monsters. He was sorry that he had to think about so much, but he realized that he could absorb the bodies of monsters, thereby restoring mana, without spending it. A window appeared, in which it was written that the target's vital activity had stopped and mana would not be spent. The system also reported that Kim succeeded in the hunt, and had restored his mama. Kim smiled happily. Kim's rank has been promoted to the rank. His skills also became the same rank as himself. Kim was glad because he understood that the more he uses the predator, the stronger it becomes. He thought that at this rate he could become S rank or even as S rank. Then he decided that he could become the first SSS rank. Kim walked down the street strewn with the corpses of monsters. Kim said that the job was done and that we should return to a twin. He turned around in surprise because, as he felt something, Kim looked up and saw the awakened one fighting against the giant ogre, hence who jumped on the monster and swung his mana blade at it, hence who shouted that he would take revenge on this monster for the souls of those kill tunes who cry, as he attacked the monster humans who spoke about himself in the third person, and shouted that he was a hero who would bring justice to the monster. Him looked at this with shame, and could not understand what was wrong with he, and so the giant ogre raised his hand to strike humans who also continued to attack him, hence who dealt many blows. The blood of the giant overspilt. There was an explosion, and a blast wave, and a beam of light at the sky. Kim looked at this in shock. The hero was surprised because humans who easily defeated the rank monster. Him thought this must be the same rank awakened one who allowed the gate to break through and Kim's past life, hence who stood on the monster sticking a month into it. Kim recognized him and admired him because he realized that humans who as strong as they say suddenly, hence who smiled and winked, saying that this pathetic monster died from his sort of justice. Kim thought that humans who was as simple as they say he, since you then began to pray with his hands folded, and Kim wondered why humans who was here, because before Kim's regression hints 8 was fighting and Fogger in another part of the city. Humans who silently prayed and addressed the residents, saying that he hoped they would be at peace. Kim looked at you, and so nervously, suddenly Kim felt the skill being used, and was shocked. A bald man with scars on his face like a dagger into the put to sleep. Each Wang was very nervous, and wondered if this was normal. Wang remembered with horror that Kim had said that many people would die today. Standing in front of a twang, Kim said that one of these people is their school nurse named Kim, said that she would die because she would help others instead of evacuating. He then asked Wang if he could put people to sleep with his sleep skill. Wang stammered and replied that he could. Then ordered a trying to tranquilize and evacuate name. Kim turned around and said he would handle the rest. Wang stood in front of the sofa and wondered how Kim knew about all this. Suddenly he thought of something that shocked him. H1 began to think that this made sense because there was no other way to explain it. H1 was very excited, and his thought, I began to get confused. Wang exclaimed that Kim was an awakened one with the skill of precognition, but the person standing behind him said that this was not the case. Wang was horrified and started shouting that foresight was very cool. However, the guy in the rope standing behind said that this was not so. However, he immediately wondered if something could go wrong. It was night outside, but the moon give off a fairly bright light. Kim, looking at the wounded humans who and the man standing in front of the awakened one, realized that something was definitely going wrong. Hence you holding the wound explained for this man to reveal who he was. The scarred men were holding two machetes. He laughed and said that even with holes in his vital organs and to remain alive, which was surprising. He also said that Arants are completely different. When this man smiled, he looked crazy and scary. He said it would only be more fun. This man is a rant villain. Hands handle, who has the stealth skill. Awakened ones who commit crimes are called villains, and the villain hands, and I was one of them. This is a murderous maniac who, while breaking through the gate, killed people for his own joy. Kim stood aside, and looking at Han, thought that he was sure that humans who and Hannah never met in a past life. Kim wondered and surprised that the future had really changed because of him. Humans who started to be him, he called and exclaimed that count as a villain. Humans who rushed to the attack and exclaimed that he would punish the villain with his own hands. However, something happened, and Hans, who stopped starting to look at his feet, they both felt the ground shake. The monster they were standing on suddenly began to rise and exude, and Tora, the giant ogre, stood up and began to growl with anger. Hyun Soo and Han jumped to side, but they reacted completely differently to this. Hans, who was shocked, and Han was delighted at the giant ogre's regeneration. The monster immediately regenerated, and his arm returned to normal. He utterly hit them both, but they managed to dodge. Upon landing, Han laughed and said that nothing could be done, and therefore he decided to leave Hints, who to this monster pawn turned around and looked at someone with a crazy expression on his face. He looked at Cam and said that they had an observer. Anyway, Han began to attack him, shouting along the way that the more victims the better. Kim was shocked because he was being attacked by such a madman, and wishing him dead, attacked him and almost cut off his head. However, Kim immediately used his skill and his neck became stone. He smiled and called Kim, then kicked Han in the face and lost ground and began to laugh, shouting that Kim was awakened. Han was surprised because Kim called him by name and even mentioned his rank. Kim big yet too slowly approaches his hand, became covered in stone. Kim said that Han is a psycho who loves to kill using his stealth skill. The hero asked if it was Khan. Kim extended his stone hand and smiling said that it was great that they had met. Han attacked him, but Kim blocked the blow the stone hand had attacked with the second sword, intending to hit Kim on the head. However, the hero up it out a block with both hands and attacked, and Kim defended using his stone skin skill. And so they'd continued to attack each other for some time, but no one seriously injured each other. Han jumped back and grinned, saying that thought Kim was quite skilled to be confident. Kim was serious and looked Hand in the eyes, and said he couldn't imagine that the blades wouldn't work on Kim. Hand was talking to Kim while Oil in the background humans who continued to fight the giant ogre, and said he doesn't know how Kim figured out who he was, but Kim probably thinks he has a chance and sans axe don't work on him. Him was very wary and prepared to continue the battle. Tom smiled madly and began to use his stealth skill. He said Kim should have realized that the world doesn't follow plants. Suddenly Hand disappeared. Kim realized that this was a stealth skill. Kim prepared for Hand's attack, and wondered if Hand was using stealth. After all, Kim turned around sharply. At the same time, he thought that Kim didn't know that this wouldn't change the fact Kim had a seemingly empty spot, but it was Ham. Kim exclaimed that Hand's attacks were not taking him down. Hand was behind and shocked Kim. He asked if Kim was sure. Out this Kim blocked Hand's attack with a stone hand, but somehow Hand still managed to damage Kim's arm and wound him. Kim was surprised. His blood leaked from his wound. Khan started laughing madly, continuing his attack. Had asked if Kim even knew how many people like him Hand had killed. Hand was very fast, and attack came from different directions, delivering many blows at the same time. He talked about worms who believe that their skills were invincible, but realizing their weakness, they immediately become lost and die from the desire to escape. Kim was very excited. He tried to defend himself with all his might. Hand exclaimed to make him understand something better. Before he died, the villain said that all skills have weaknesses. He then attacked again, and judging by the blood spouse outer wounded Kim's blood spilled onto the ground. The hero was breathing heavily. It was clear that he was exhausted. Kim stood and thought that he did not know that stone skin had such a disadvantage. Stone's hand does not completely block the attack. The unbearable shock breaks the stone in the destroyed part is replaced by stone with noticeably reduced strength and began to reveal his seeker. Rossi him felt that crazy look. The hero also realized that Khan had been achieving this from the very beginning. The stony skin on Kim's face slowly began to crumble. Kim smiled and thought that now he was definitely sure that he could withstand a one-on-one fight against the B rank, because his physical abilities are far above the average. The wreck in an instant, the smile disappeared from Hand's face, and he was shocked because Kim said that it seemed like it was time to finish the tests. Khan again rushed to attack. As he approached him, he began laughing and shouting that Kim seemed to be going crazy when he was pushed into a dead end while Hand was running. Kim asked if Hand knew why Kim wanted to meet him. However, Hand laughed and asked what Kim was babbling about. Suddenly a red or a lit up everything around. Hand was shocked. Him, after starting to use the predator, said that he wanted to meet Hand because he wanted to take away his skill. Constant still and fear, and wondered what this ominous motto was. He also wondered if Kim had been hiding her all this time. However, Khan started laughing and smiling like a madman again, and began to move around. Kim had incredible speed. He said he didn't know what the skill was, but asked if Kim thought she could hit it without seeing it. Khan's skill meanwhile was almost ready to be used. Kim asked if Hand himself didn't say that all skills have weaknesses. The hero said that he realized this when he absorbed the monsters. According to him, some of them constantly left his field of vision, but in the predator caught up with everyone. The predator began to catch up with Khan. The villain was shocked that the predator was catching up with him and looked at it, and horror. One of Kim's eyes glowed red. He said that no matter where Khan hid, no matter where you ran, the predator would catch him no matter what. At that moment, Khan began to scream. The predator caught and devoured him, tearing him into pieces. Meanwhile, the sun appeared over the horizon and began to dawn. Humans who was lying on the ground. He was exhausted and thought that if only the villain, Khan, had not injured him. Humans who looked forward and thought that even he, the hero of justice on humans who could not defeat death. The giant ogre was heading towards Hans, who was exhausted and lying on the ground. The monstrous one, and began to growl. The giant ogre hit Hans, who with incredible force, but the monster was surprised and angry. After all, Hans who has disappeared somewhere. Kim wondered what was going on, and said that humans who was sprawled on the ground. Kim stood behind the monster holding Hans, who by the collar. Kim, calling on the predator skill, said that this was not surprising because, after all, it was much easier. Some more time passed. The man and woman opened a door, and Rich H. Wang and Kim stood in front of them. Each Wang, turning to his parents happily, said that he was home. And Kim asked his uncle if everything was fine. H1's parents burst into tears. They started screaming that they thought monsters had grabbed them, but each Wang replied that nothing of the sort had happened. They started going home, and each Wang's parents said that maybe it didn't happen to them because they weren't at home, but in the house. According to them, there was such a mess, as if someone had turned the whole house upside down. When felt awkward, and started talking about how nothing happened. He asked him if this was true, but Kim laughed awkwardly, and replied that it was difficult for him to say, and so they entered the house. After some time Kim held the phone in his hands, and watched the breaking news. The reporter said that according to government statements the current threat of breaching the gate has been completely eliminated. The presenter also said that given the possibility of another breakthrough, the government ordered nearby schools to close for a week. Also, the survivors have begun to successfully recover, and the public can breathe a sigh of relief. The same fair-haired man with glass was walking through the hospital said that it was not a C rank but an A rank. The nurse who May 20 saved spoken surprised that when she woke up she was already here. Journalists of course did not leave Hansu alone, and surrounded him with attention. However, Hansu began to shout that it was not he who defeated the giant ogre, and that the real hero was another person. The reporter said that however, since the corpse of the giant ogre was not found, and the identity of the villain who attacked the people is not known for certain, people are worried that the security measures may not be sufficient. Kim, looking at the phone, said that this was great. He turned off the phone and was glad that there was not a word about him in the news. Kim smiled with joy and said that then it was time to move on to the next step. He was standing on the tree and tracks in front of the tunnel. There were 3 skills and Kim's status window, namely Stealth Predator skill and Stone Skin skill. Kim realized that he now had 3 skills, and also realized that gaining the Stealth skill was particularly successful. However, at his current level, it is too difficult to use all 3 skills at once because inappropriate use will use up all of his mana, as well as increases fatigue level, and everything will end quite badly. Kim, continuing to walk, thought that potions would be the best solution. Potions, or elixir, is created for various purposes, such as restoring mana or fatigue. Walking through the tunnel, Kim thought that potions were expensive, so he needed to earn money. The hero began to walk along a narrow passage between the wall. He understood that to hunt he needed official permission. Even the simple use of skills without such permission is considered illegal. Kim came out of this gorge and decided that there was only one thing left for him. When he came out of the gorge, a large area opened up in front of him in which there were many monsters. Kim realized that all he could do was clear out unexplored dungeons. The spider monsters who looked at Kim and asked him how pathetic mortal dared to come here. They also wondered how he was able to find them and wanted to paralyze him and have a feast. Kim, standing in front of them, said that they spoke well and asked if they were highly developed monsters. These monsters or B-ranked spider sisters. Kim raised his hand and said that B rank was not enough to change his rank and wondered if he would have to kill 100 of them. The monsters were very angry because Kim dared to insult them. They asked if he didn't yet understand the situation. He was if one of the spider sisters was about to spit something. Kim cheats and purple mana him. The monsters happily attacked him, saying that they would eat him alive. The monsters began to gloat, asking how Kim felt. Now one of the spider sisters asked if Kim felt his body turning to stone and paralysis setting it. Kim's skill activated in his eye glowed thanks to mystical power. Kim gained resistance. The spider sisters were shocked because Kim said that as he thought they had a useful skill. From the tunnel came the cry of one of the monsters who asked him to stop. Then more screams started coming from the tunnel. Kim succeeded in hunting and gained a skill of paralysis. The action moves to the tower of the new South Korean Players Association. There were 2 guards standing in front of the office. 3 adults were sitting at the table in the office. Among them sat the deputy manager, the personal officer of the new South Korean Players Association. Go to work. He was nervous because 2 of the best players in the association were sitting in front of him. The player is an awakened one who is allowed to use their skills for various purposes such as exploring the abyss, clearing dungeons, and so on. There are now 5 centers of such players in South Korea. The largest Korean guilds: the 4 great guilds: fighters, indivisible masters, alchemists, magicians, wizards, informants, night walker. His and the authorized agency managing the players, including the 4 great guilds. This is the new Players Association of South Korea. The man was excited because very influential people were sitting right in front of him. Sitting at the table with the blue-haired, green-eyed girl in the head of the night walkers killed and S-rank player. She greeted the chairman and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. A gray-haired man with an eye patch sat in front of her. He is the chairman of the new South Korean Players Association and S-rank player judge. And he thanked her for coming, saying that he knew she was busy. We asked if she learned anything. The girl asked, and responsive Chairman Jai was talking about the Guild of Villains. The Guild of Villains as a criminal organization founded by The most renegade of even the villains members of this guild wore gold rings with 3 skulls and handed over some documents to Chairman Guy. She said that these were the latest movements of the villains guild, as well as the list of players they were targeting. Leaning back, she said that he was sure that Chairman Jai did not call her to personally hand over documents, so she asked him why he called her chair. Iman Guy, holding the documents in his hands, looked at In and left Jai surprised the In by saying that he wanted to know her opinion. Chairman Jai then asked her about when she passed the player test. He was a little confused, but replied that she had of course taken the player test when she reached the qualifying age of 19. However, In suddenly fell silent. She was surprised by some thing. Chairman Jai smiled slyly. In seemed to understand what the chairman wanted to say. Then Chairman Guy asked her if she thought a high school student could fight a monster. Kim meanwhile was sitting on a mountain of monster corpses. Kim have a lot of gems in his backpack, and Kim himself was calling someone he called one of the 4 great guilds, the alchemists. Kim held a glowing purple donut in his hands. He said he wanted to buy some potions. The 7-day school closer to the gate bridge and students returning to school during the 7 days. Kim and a Twang engaged in physical training. In addition, Kim managed to clear another dungeon. When Kim came to one of the 4 largest alchemist guilds, the people who met him were shocked by the number of magic stones that Kim brought. The guild members explained that they would take him to the VIP and make a deal with the alchemist. Kim bought potions thanks to the fact that he brought mana stones to the guild. Mana stone, a stone that acts as the heart of a monster and is used to craft potions and equipment. Kim's status window has also changed heroes to C rank. Kim sat and thought that there was still a long way to go. The hero sat at his desk and realized that he still needed to go to school. Surprised classmates approached him and said that there were rumors that Kim had single-handedly pulverized his henchman. One of his classmates was horrified, saying that Kim was in big trouble. Anyway, the girl asked him why. The guy replied, and surprised, does she really not know? At that moment 3 people were heading toward a red-haired guy in a suit sat in front of Kim, and 2 more stood behind this guy. A classmate who was watching from the side said that Lee Johns would not leave it like that. A terrifying or emanated from Lee. He turned to Kim, calling him a friend, and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. It was Lee Johns, and his rank awakened. Lee is the leader of the decent high school get 3rd generation keep all of T's and group, a large corporation sponsoring TEEF. And high school memories from a past life began to pop up in Kim's head, namely how he was beaten in an alley. PM looked angrily at the offenders, simultaneously wiping the blood from his mouth. 2 bad guys stood in front of him and behind them steadily. Kim understood that Lee was the main culprit who said hex on him, only because Kim was not awakened. The hero asked Lee if he was his friend, and then grinned. Kim looked at him threateningly and told him not to talk nonsense and get lost. We reacted calmly, but the guy standing behind him started calling him names and pointing at Kim. A moment later Lee punched the guy in the face. We stood up and looked at his fallen comrade. We looking at him asked if he didn't see that Lee was busy talking. Kim sat at his desk holding his hands in his pockets. He was completely calm, smiling a little. Lee said that he knew Kim was very excited after defeating Hex, so Kim was shocked. Something red lit up the room. Lee stood on the desk in front of Kim. Incredible power and mana wafted from him. We asked if it was necessary to tease an opponent by looking him in the face. Watching these mana wondered and surprised whether this was the magical power of an awakened class. Kim was shocked because Lee's mana was just off the charts. Kim began to take his hands out of his pockets. At this point, we told him to pay attention. When he was told important things, Kim took out his hand and wondered what it would be like for him to meet a predator. Suddenly, some blue-haired woman appeared and told me to leave. Henchman Lee wanted to stop this girl, but she froze his hand using her skill. Kim recognized her immediately. It was Lo Mile. Lin told him to finish too. He was tense, but he smiled. Kim knew that he was an S-rank awaken, as well as a future SS rank player, and besides she was the most promising. Kim thought that she had so many nicknames, and there would be even more names. Lim meanwhile let go of Lie's henchman hand. Lem and Lee looked at each other seriously. Kim realized that retreat was simply impossible. Lee began to smile and joke. He said that there was some kind of misunderstanding because this was just a conversation between friends. Lim asked again and said that we had just tried to punch. Kim. Lee addressed her and told her not to cross the line. However, Lim was serious and not afraid. She said that if we did not leave on his own she would help him, and therefore asked him to leave. An aura began to rage around them. Kim looked at them nervously and thought that they really should leave everything, otherwise if they continued the class would be in danger of disruption. We looked down at Lim arrogantly and the girl in turn continued to look at him humbly. We suddenly turned around and said that he was not going to fight. Lim in bed, he suddenly started using the skill and fire appeared holding a fire sphere in his hands, and pointing the sphere at Lim. Lee asked if she really thought he would say that Leave was already ready to attack, but the bell began to ring. I am also heard this call, and was distracted by it. Tim continued to sit calmly on the chair keeping his hands in his pockets. Someone started broadcasting a message from the loudspeaker. A voice sounded from the speaker. The broadcast department began to convey a message to the students. It was announced to the students that the Players Association would be holding a special lecture in the main hall. Students must immediately assemble, and the main hall. This message was broadcast throughout the school, and repeated several times. We stopped using the skill, and the fireball from his hand slowly began to disappear. We looked nervous. When he heard about the Players Association, Lee was unhappy that this was happening now. Lim continued to stand on alert, ready to fight Lee. However, Lee smiled and said that it happened at the right time. We walked out of the class and said that they could count themselves lucky. The door slammed shut and Lim relaxed. She turned around and turning to Kim asked if he was okay. She wanted to say that Kim might not think her, but Kim was no longer in the chair, which surprised her. Limless surprise because Kim was already standing at the exit of the classroom and asked her what she was worth. The hero also asked if she hadn't heard the announcement of the gathering in the main hall. Him said that then he would go first. She looked at him stunned and seemed to have a few questions. Came close the door and limit even more questions. She was at a loss when wondered if Kim had always been like this. After some time all the students gathered in the main hall of the school. The students sitting in the hall wondered what the lecture organized by the Players Association would be about. They assumed it was due to the gate being breached. The students were surprised because the deputy director of personnel of the Players Association Go to Work was speaking to them. Tabarak, standing in front of the podium, said that there were two reasons why he had gathered them here. One of them is the lack of response to gate breach. He began to talk about another reason when suddenly as Manhwa, which is purple, and color, went wild, taking the microphone and looking menacingly at the students. To York said that for those of them who are responsible for the future of their new Korea, they are informing about changes in the player exam. We made a displeased face during his speech, continuing to think about Kim and calling him names. And Lim with a thoughtful look thought that later she would need to find out about him. Kim in turn on. During this lecture the students began to look at each other and wonder what the players exam had to do with them. They were at a loss, because this exam is intended for 19-year-olds, and this year, they will not be able to participate anyway. To work at this point said that this has something to do with them, so he is here to make recommendations. According to him, recently, an unexpected event occurred, a breach of the gate due to the sudden increase in the number of monsters and dungeons. Their Players Association admits that they are short of manpower. Therefore, starting this year, they planned to allow even high school students to receive recommendations. The students were shocked and began to wonder and surprised that this really meant that the I could do it. To Tower said the guidelines for each school include testing of aptitude grades and behavior. According to him, they plan to select people based on complete numerical data. Kim smiled, realizing that this was a lie to you. It continued to say something but came at that moment was thinking the high school students could actually take this exam, but the selection itself was already underway. Kim realized that this was T-work skill. Tabarak using the skill watch the students, his eyes glowing purple. Kim knew that T or could determine the observer's guess topics. He is some numbers above each student. Observers, I have the ability to quantify the total number of abilities of the one he is looking at and even see the player's status window information when concentrating. To I smiled as he looked at the students, seeing the numbers above them. To it knew that the numbers here were definitely better than other places he knew they would be. Rate Players. Kavik was excited about something because among these students, there are the most amazing ones. It was Lee, above whom was the number 1924. Lim was second with 2335 of points. Above her, Telek reflected that he had received a list of recommended targets from the Night Walkers, but such numbers were surprising for an unprepared. Awakened smiling, Tabak realized that he would have to write a letter of recommendation as soon as he returned to the association. Suddenly raised his hand and addressed the player. To Ok, the deputy director was a little surprised and excitedly he stood with his hand raised and asked the question. We recall that To Work said that he would provide recommendations for the players' examination. Solely asked if there were those who are not at all suitable for this position. lowered his hand. He went on to say that the player exam as a test to determine if any of the awakened are qualified to become a player. Y then glared at Kame and said that he believed the awakened have known he. To hear this, a player is not only his strength, of course, the awakened rank, the ability to deal with various situations, the vast knowledge of the abyss. All of these complex abilities must be tested in order to qualify to become a player. However, Lee said that the first difficulty is being awake. The disciples looked at Kame and mocked him, because we asked if the unawakened would suffer if they listened to this. Kim looked at Lee and wondered if we really wanted to test whether Kim was awakened by making such a speech. We looked at Kane with a smile. 1 and to prove that he was awakened if he really was. Suddenly Lim turned around and the elderly, however, Kim shamed her by asking her if he asked her to help. Lim felt awkward. She felt so ashamed that she quickly turned away, closed her eyes and decided that she would not interfere. Lee said he hopes he gets out of here as soon as possible. Meanwhile, T.W. began to say that he understood what Lee was talking about, but attending this lecture depended on them. We tried to piss Kim off while the rest of the students looked at the hero with a grin. Lee asked if Kim was ashamed since he still wouldn't be able to get a recommendation as an awake. And when Kim stood calmly and looked at Lee keeping his hands in his pockets, we asked whether Kim really doesn't care about things like examining players. Kim was still unperturbed. He wondered if this was possible, because if Kim could not clearly prove that he was an awakened one, then he would not have a chance to pass the exam. Kim looked up and saw the gaze of an observer above him. He realized that he didn't have to prove himself personally to get a recommendation. Such attention was directed towards free students, namely him and Len. To have put his hand to his chin and thought he understood that although we had an S rank, he was just a bully, and therefore he was sorry to York. Turned his attention to Kim to work. Understood that according to the students, Kim was an awakened whose potential level was unknown. You wanted to think that he felt sorry for Kim, but suddenly as skilled and work on the hero too. I was shocked because his skill could not confirm the information. Kim stood in a row of students. He said that Lee was right and admitted that he was narrow-minded. Lee was at a loss. Kim began to ask about the benefit of listening to such information for the unawakened, because it would only hurt least pride. And then Kim said, that's why you'll come out. Having said this, Kim give bully the middle finger. We was furious. Kim told me to stay and listen to the excellent lecture Lee grand and kept saying that he was completely infuriating to UC. Meanwhile was in shock. He couldn't believe that his observer's gaze didn't work. He was so shocked because this did not happen to the president. The knew to walk towards the exit. He was almost at the exit, but suddenly he stopped to work, still tried to use his skill to check his skills, but the skill reply that it was impossible to confirm the information. Tim turned around calmly to work was even more shocked because he got to see Kim's skills, and incredible or emanated from Kim, and above his head was the number 5096 as well as that white creature who called himself king. Has some time the school was empty. There was not a single student in the corridors. Him seemed to be in the library, which was also empty. He sat on a pile of books, and while reading a book said that he was thinking of using his free time to look for clues about the king. Then Kim looked forward with a smile. 3 aggressive students in front of him. Kim said there was no point in staying here anyway. One of the students told him that Lee was looking for him, so he ordered Kim to follow them. Kim, continuing to leaf through the book, asked what would happen if he didn't want to. Then henchman least smiled and said with a smile that Kim, it seems, runs his aunt's restaurant. Kim was shocked to hear this. Kim asked the student about this, and so prize, he replied that Lee asked to convey. Grinning, the student said that Kim has no parents and is already having a hard time. He asked if Kim wanted to make her life even more difficult. The bully was talking about how they would force Kim to go anyway, but Kim's punch at that moment almost reached the bully. The blow is so powerful that the shockwave knocked out the doors of the the library was destroyed. All the shelves were broken. Kim had this bully by the throat. Kim lifted him by the throat with one hand and kept his other hand in his pocket. The remaining 2 opponents lay unconscious on the floor. Kim told the bully not to make him ask twice. Kim turned to his henchman and asked where Lee himself was. Some time passed in there was no one in the main hall apparent. Lee, they came to the gym. Kim came into the hall. 2 guys that in front of him, some bald man standing behind Life, holding his hand in front of him and trying to use the skill, said that this was amazingly. Asked him what exactly was surprising. This bald man's name is Saw Hunter. He is an rank hunter and Lee's bodyguard. Hondo said that since Kim arrived here, 100 has used the status using skill several times. Incredible red mana raised around Kim. 100 said the skill doesn't work at all. According to him, if Kim has this level of resistance, then he is probably an a rank awakened. Lee grinned and said that Kim was awakened after all. Least smiled and invited him to talk his friends. However, Kim remained silent. We reached out and started talking about how he was being harsh but didn't actually mean to hurt Kim. According to him, he rather wanted to find out about Kim. Lee extended his hand and said that after graduation he would create a guild that would be the successor to the Tiefend group, but even a genius like him couldn't do everything alone. Kim was still silent and did not answer. We asked if Kim knew what was needed. Lee pointed upward and exclaimed that he knew. He added footage. According to him, he does not need losers like hacks who but truly talented. Once Lee pointed at Cam and exclaimed that he needed people like Ken. Now suddenly began shouting for Kim to forget about old grievances and be with him. That also shouted that Kim would then have wealth and fame and his family would be able to escape life in the gutter. However, Kim suddenly said that this was all nonsense. We was shocked. Him began using the stone skin skill while asking about wealth and fame. Kim covered himself with stone skin and angrily said that we had crossed the line. We looked at him and surprised. He closed his eyes and exhaled and said that this was true. We also started using his skill and explained that it was because the dogs needed to be shown their place. Hunter it began to use his skill and magical science appeared in front of him. He used the space skill, space, as a barrier. Skilled it surround space with the shield. The magical powers inside the shield cannot be sensed from the outside. He covered the hall with a barrier. Having finished creating the barrier, Hunter Clapton said that this way the whole school would not know about their fight. We immediately rushed to attack, but Kim jumped and dodged. Kim was about to hit back. We also had no intention of retreating and was preparing to attack. They hit each other and a magic sphere formed between them. Kim's fist and Lee's fist collided with each other. Kim felt severe pain. He jumped back, but Lee immediately attacked him with his foot. We hit Kim so hard that Kim was thrown back violently and also created an X. Closure. Kim hit the wall and blood started coming out of his mouth. Lee started laughing and asking him if he understood. Now Hundred stood and watched the battle, but everything was littered with explosions and fire. Hundred watched him, kept his hands in his pockets, thinking that he felt sorry for Kim. The hero continued to attack Lee. He was not going to give up. Hondo thought that Kim was probably in a rank awakened with high body strengthening skills. With such a level of combat instincts and willpower, it is difficult to believe that Kim is still a schoolboy. Hondo suggested that Ken probably usually couldn't even find an opponent. Hundred knew that today's battle was completely different. Kim meanwhile attacked Lee, but Lee blocked his hand and prepared to strike back. We hit using his skill. He hit Kim right in the face. The hero was unable to block this attack. Hondo understood that the so-called as rank fruit of talent was fighting against Kim. Watching the fight, Hondo was sure that Kim had no chance of winning. He thought that Kim should just learn his lesson and give up. However, suddenly something shocked him. Lee attacked Kim, but the hero was able to dodge, bite, move, ring back. Kim was about to hit back and swan. Kim hit, but Lee blocked and took no damage. Then they swung at each other together. Kim's punch was faster and Hitler right in the face. Kim slammed his opponent into the ground. The blow is quite strong. Hondo was shocked. He couldn't believe that Kim threw Mr. Lee away. Lay on the floor groaning in pain, trying to move. He started calling Kim names, asking him how he dared to do this. We realized that he could not move. Hondo was stunned and wondered if we really couldn't move. Looking at Kim, Hundred wondered if Kim's skill was not limited to armor. He also questioned who Ken even was. Kim exclaimed joyfully that he had finally succeeded. Hundred wondered what Kim did. There are 3 skills in total that Kim acquired thanks to a predator stone skin, the stealth he took away from the villainous Khan, and also the paralysis he received from the Spider Sisters. However, Kim did not use all the skills from the very beginning. C-rank paralysis cannot easily overcome. S-rank resistance and visibility is quickly destroyed by a wide range of fire attacks, and the predator is the last resort and you should resort to it haphazardly. Therefore, Kim's goal was to accumulate paralysis and the enemy in close combat. That's why Kim exchanged blows with Lee. The status reduction skill has a greater effect if enhanced by a direct hit rather than applied at a distance. In other words, if paralysis has inflicted several times by continuous strikes, then even with the opponent's S-rank resistance, he will not be able to withstand. Kim used paralysis several times but least successfully resisted, but in the end can manage to inflict paralysis. Kim began to slowly approach the perilously. Hondo was still shocked. He thought it was incredible that Kim had defeated Mr. Lee in direct confrontation, which was beyond anyone's expectations. Kim stood directly and for of the perilously. The enemy was still groaning in pain. Returned to Cameron, said he would admit Lee took out a purple gem. Lee said that he seemed to underestimate him too much, because otherwise according to him, he would not have been beaten by trash like Kim. We began to squeeze the purple gem he was holding. Libra. This gem PM was shocked because there was a surge of mana leased it up, and a fiery monster appeared behind him. Least face was on fire, covering his face with his hand. Lee said that now he too would be a worthy opponent. Kim started to run away. The fire monster attacked him. At some point Kim jumped forward. The fire monster trying to hit Kim hit the ground, but Kim was able to dodge because he jumped. The hero prepared to attack back. Kim's own skin skill focused on his arm. The monster opened its mouth and began to form a fireball. This fireball was truly huge. Him struck trying to break through this fireball. However, Kim's stone skin began to crumble. Kim was unable to damage the monster, and it attacked Kim, throwing him back. Kim fell to the ground. 100 watched the fight from afar. He knew that this was Mr. Lie's skill, the true form of S-rank Flame Heart. Kim held on to the second floor railing and watched the fight. He reflected that in his normal human form it would be difficult to unleash the true power of the S-class, but before that leaves the magic enhancement stone. The magic stone, the heart of the monster, is a product obtained through processing. This stone temporarily enhances magical power. 100 was confident that if this was what he saw, then Lee was now capable of unleashing his S-rank power to its full potential. However, 100 was excited about something, namely, that there was some kind of problem. He shouted to Mr. Lie and asked him to stop. Hondo asked if he really was going to kill Kim. 100 shouted and concerned that besides this magic power was too strong for Lee, and therefore he would not be able to cope. According to him, as soon as all of Lie's blood vessels will burst due to the leakage of magical energy, suddenly began to attack this project or flew straight at Handel, but the bodyguard was able to dodge this attack, also destroyed the barrier. We holding his outstretched hand in front of him ordered 100 a shot up because he was just a bodyguard, so how dare he give orders. Kim meanwhile slowly stood up, groaning in pain because he was wounded. Lee called Kim names and said he had humiliated him. Lee asked if 100 was telling him to stop. Kim looked ahead and was stunned. At the same moment this monster hit Kim, shouting that 100 should not order him. Lee started laughing like crazy and screaming for Kim to die. 100 and awards them, thinking that we had gone crazy. He also began to think about how he could have stopped Lee. Hondo approached Kim and asked if he was alive. He asked him to stop fighting and run. He extended his hand became and said that he would somehow stop Mr. Wee. He wanted to tell him to run away quickly, but Kim immediately hit him. The blow is so strong on that it threw 100 several meters away. Kim managed to get up. He asked if he had to run. When we started the fight first, Lisa that he of course admits that S rank is a completely different level. Him and just use several potions as the Titstana and Manic were restored him some hint that Predator and terrifying red mana appeared around it. He exclaimed that he too had become him self. Meanwhile, in the Players Association Tower T to that in front of Chairman Jinwei in his office, Chairman generally was shocked to learn that 2 students from the school had 1,900 and 2,300 points. He asked in surprise if this was true. To it confirmed this and said that we had 1,900 points and Lim he had 2,300 points. Revealed that they were both S-rank. Awakened the association staff standing nearby exclaimed in surprise that even though they had an S-rank, Y had 1,900 points even without training. Another employee said in surprise that this was already comparable to a level hunters. She asked if this was not the level of a Japanese assassin. Chairman Jinwei laughed and wondered if the same level hunter had finally appeared in their new Korea. Tabo get that moment thought about the sun as one of the hunters representing Japan. She was 19 years old when she first checked her level and found monsters whose total points had already exceeded 2,500. Tabak thought that even this monster only had 2,500 points. To remembered with horror about Kim and wondered what happened to keep M's points. After all, to excel Kim have a little over 5,000 points. To I began to think about it. He thought it was a simple illusion, our mistake on his skill. He couldn't understand what it was, and so they left the office of the chairman of the association Jin Wee and headed somewhere following Tabik were for more employees. Topic was determined. He decided that he had to find out everything personally. Honda meanwhile was in amazement. He watched the fight between Commonly and what he saw horrified, and 100 looked up and wondered in amazement how this was possible. It turned out that he was shocked that Kim, using his predator skill, began to defeat Lee. The predator began to tear the monster into pieces, and it seems cut off its head leak until knew to fight and wondered why this happened. Lee was angry. He couldn't understand why he was thrown away by a worm like Kim. Lee became angry and started shouting that he was the heir of the Teethan group and had an S-Rec League's monster became even stronger. He started shouting that he was Lee Josh. However, Kim continued to stand calmly with his hand outstretched. Tim asked why he cared about these us rank and whose heir he was. Kim's eye glowed red as he used his predator skill. Lee continued to fight furiously. Kim said that he doesn't care because he has the skill of a king. In an instant Kim became huge. He stood overly pointing his palm at him. The predator's tentacles rushed towards Lee. This guy was terrified. He seemed frozen with fear. The red tentacles reached him. Everything around was illuminated with light. From the outside the school looked normal, but inside this hall there was a crazy battle going on. Suddenly there was a powerful explosion in the school hall, was destroyed. The ceiling was destroyed and the hall itself began to burn. Lee was lying unconscious on the floor, with numerous wounds. Hondo was shaking, and beads of sweat were running down his face. Kim looked at him and said that he surprised him behind handle. Wally Hondo was so tired that he had to sit down. Kim did not expect Hondo's to hold it out. Although Kim was just using a predator, Kim stood calmly in front of Hondo holding his hands in his pockets, while Hundred could barely stand on his feet. Kim thought that it didn't matter since he had already taken the skill anyway. Hondo asked Kim what he was thinking about. The bodyguard began to talk about how his master's the heir of the T's and group, so Hondo asked how Kim was going to deal with the consequences. Kim humbly asked if Hundred really couldn't see himself. He also asked about who started the fight first and what Hondo thought Kim wouldn't say. Kim smiled and raised his head and asked if he looked like a person who would be scared by something like that. Meanwhile the hall continued to burn. Kim asked Hondo not to worry, because Kim had no intention of killing Lee anyway. Kim said that in return he should receive payment for his life. Hundred was surprised and asked about this payment for life. Kim began to think out loud and mentioned that Lee was the heir to the Teeth and group. Hondo became nervous and there was concern in his eyes. Kim put his hand to his chin and began to think him presenting a lot of money. Asked if he shouldn't get 1 billion for leave. The students were evacuated. They watched the burning hall. Standing nearby among the students was Lim. She was terrified because she began to understand something. The disciples were also shocked. They thought it was an attack from a demon or monster. Lim felt magic and straw flames, and therefore she realized that this was definitely Li's power. However, she could not understand who his opponent was. Lim imagined Lee beating Han because he had previously pretended not to show that he was awakened. Lim imagined that this was exactly what happened. Nurse Name was trying to calm the students when Lim suddenly ran past her. The nurse suddenly turned around and shouted to her, but Lim Ian continued to run. Ion headed towards the gym door, realizing that she had made a mistake because she hadn't checked the gym. Lim pushed through the flames thinking about Kim and how it was her fault for not checking the gym. Walking into the gym, the only thing she wanted was for Kim to stay alive. However, as soon as he entered she saw the lying on the ground, but Kim stood calmly keeping his hands in his pockets as usual. Kim and Lim just remained silent, looking at each other. She was surprised and couldn't believe her eyes. With every second she had more and more questions. Kim grinned and exclaimed that she came in at the right time because he needed a witness, or rather someone to move Lee. Kim asked Lim to move Lee to the infirmary, or better yet directly to the hospital. A blood and doubted Kim's words. However, Kim continued to say that he did not know what happened, and therefore he aslam not to tell anyone that she saw him here. Kim explained that he had gone and was about to leave, but Lim turned around abruptly and asked him to stop and explain everything properly. Kim did not listen to her and disappeared. A moment later, Limless was that Kim disappeared so quickly. She called out to him again, but he had already left there using his stealth skill, because after some time he misspelled the stealth, being quite far from the school. Looking towards the school, Kim said that it was nice that Lim would somehow take care of Lee. Kim also said that the Teeth and group will not be pestered either, and therefore the issue is approximately resolved. However, at this moment Kim was arrested in something completely different, namely his status window. Kim opened the status window, which still showed C rank. Looking at the status window, Kim wondered what it was. The status window displayed Kim's charm level, namely 5 charm points. Also among Kim's skills, with a skill called the Heart of the Monarch, which increases the abilities of group members. Kim was surprised, then wondered if charm only applies to appearance like celebrities. He also wondered how such a thing got here in the first place, when he absorbed least power. In addition, the acquired skill is called Fiery Heart. This skill is called Heart of a Monarch. The skill increases the abilities of group members. Kim wondered if this Lie Worm really had such a skill. Kim smiled and thought that this was actually good. He understood that skills that affected an entire group were rare regardless of their level. Since Kim has multiple skills, he can combine them, but Heart of the Monarch is much better. Kim exclaimed in surprise that this was a cool skill, but at that moment someone drove up to him in a car. Kim turned around and saw 3 black cars in front of him. Kim was done, but he did not run away. A man got out of the car and said that student Kim had finally been found. This man was Havoc, and he was surrounded by several other employees. T-Work, approaching Kim, said that he had several questions for Kim. Kim looked at him in surprise and wondered why this man was here now. Purple mana raised around Tabiki asked him about what he did in the gym. Meanwhile, something was happening in some luxurious mansion. The man holding a glass of whiskey with ice asked if this was the result. While the man was talking to someone, 3 black dogs were barking in the background. This man said that his only son was in the hospital, but as if that was not enough, he paid for his life. The compensation was 1 billion. Father asked someone if he could deal with this problem as quietly as possible. Fatherly was sitting in a chair, and next to him sat 3 aggressive dogs that barked incessantly. Hondo was kneeling in front of him and stammeringly asked for forgiveness. Hondo was terrified, he was trembling. Hundred started talking about how he would do whatever Fatherly ordered. However, Fatherly told Hundred to do whatever he saw fit. Hondo was shocked and asked about this in surprise. Lee's father chuckled and said that Kim was very cocky, and it was funny. Suddenly the man stuck out his finger and said there was something else. He snapped his fingers and exclaimed that no matter how much they paid, they should also receive compensation. 2 men appeared behind Hondo. Hundred began to nervously address Mr. Director. Hondo began to nervously shout that leaves upon it was a very young boy, and therefore it was merciless. And then the director showed up. The man looked almost exactly like Lee, however he has a small beard and his hair is shorter than Lee's. Red mana emanated from him. He ordered Hundred to shut up because he did not allow the dog to bark. The man smiled easily as them on around him rage even more. His name is Lee Jong, so he is an S-rank hunter and the CEO of T's and Group. Kim looked at Toucan surprise and wondered how he ended up here. To work asked him about what he was doing at the gym. Kim wondered if To Work was talking about the explosion or if he was talking about the incident at the lecture. Kim couldn't understand what To Work was talking about. Took meanwhile continued to silently look at Kim. Wait. For an answer to the question, Kim was thinking that T-Walk, the deputy director of the association, the chances of him personally visiting the fire site were slim, but Kim was worried that To Work already knew Kim was the culprit and made his move. Kim decided that all that remained was to find out. Kim said about the gym and asked if T-Work was talking about the explosion at the gym. Tabik asked again about the explosion. It turned out that he knew nothing about Gate. To Work turned around and realized that Kim was talking about the shaken the distance. Tabik said that there is nothing wrong with this because other organizations will still have to deal with this problem. Suddenly he looked at him again and said that he had never heard an answer from him. Kim wondered if T-York really didn't know about the explosion then. To asked him about what he was doing in the gym. Kim smiled because he was only too happy to talk about it. He surprised them by asking if they really didn't know yet. Kim began to talk about how he was sure that their visit was due to the fact that they wanted to invite him to the hunter test. Puke laughed and wanted to ask on what basis can make such a statement. At this point, Kim began to use the predator. Kim used the predator and 5214 appeared above him. He asked if this was not enough. The association members and Tebo were shocked to have it, couldn't believe it. A terrifying mana raids around Kim. Puke realized that Kim had become even stronger during these hours. Topic was amazed because this meant that this figure was neither a coincidence nor an error. He looked at Kim and wondered who he was. Too aghast why Kim's clothes were so dirty, and Haim immediately stopped using this hill because he felt embarrassed. After some time, Kim was already at home. Each Wayne screamed throughout the house. When he heard that Kim wanted to take the hunter exam, HY ran into Kim's room and began pestering him with questions. While he was doing physical exercises, each Wang asked if Kim was really going to the hunter exam. Kim confirmed this and said that he would go there in a month. Each Wang was so stunned that he dropped his jaw. H. Wang began to worship Kim, calling him king and god. Kim felt awkward and asked if each Wang was joking. Kim continued to do the exercise while at the same time he thought that the incident at the gym would be taken care of by the T-Fin group, and therefore To York's suspicions would most likely be dispelled. Kim decided that since the exam was in a month he could concentrate on training. Kim decided that there would be no more problems, but suddenly someone called him. This call was anonymous. At the same time someone was standing and watching the house from outside on the roof of a neighboring building. Some Bill and held the ISO CH and Hunter by the throat, and asked why the association hunter was guarding the house of a high school student. These two villains were wearing masks. One of them was watching the house, while the other dealt with the hunter of the association. The villain in the black mask grinned, and said that Kim was probably one of those participating in the next hunter test. This man said that this is so because that is how they take care of rising. So Doris, these two men are killers. A black brother and a white brother. This is a ranked demon. The elder brother is nicknamed Black. He has the skill of stealth, as well as body enhancement. The assassin, the younger white brother, with the B rank and stealth skill, wondered if Kim was really a rising star, since he was just a brat with little experience. The black brother laughed and took out his blades and said that this is true, because even if this is a promising nasty hunter, without sufficient experience, he is nothing. The black brother started shouting like a madman that they would show everyone what a real awakened one is. However, his plans were disrupted as soon as he turned around, as he saw him holding his little brother and beating him. The black brother attacked Kim, asking him who he was. Kim released the white brother, who was already passed out, and prepared to fight with the black brother. Literally one moment, Kim's knee was already in the face of his black brother. Kim hit the black brother in the face with his knee, having previously strengthened the knee with the stone from such a strong blow. The black brother passed out. Kim looked at him with a smile and said that he was their small fry with no experience. A few hours before, the gym was on fire, and a shocked exclamation from 100 could be heard. After Kim asked for $1 billion, Hondo on his knees began to talk about how even if you remain silent about this incident, it was not for him to decide. Kim said he knew about it. Standing in front of Hondo and holding his hands in his pockets, Kim said that he was not such a bad person to hold his subordinates accountable. Kim asked that 100 simply do his best to reach an agreement. Hondo was shocked because Kim started using magic and talking about how he wanted to do something, and case Hondo betrayed him. Kim extended his hand and invited 100 to take the awaken off, and also asked if 100 could make a conclusion the awakened oath as a way to enter into a contract created by the Awak, and using magic willpower. In case of violation, a permanent random fine is imposed. Kim said the conditions are simple. 100 was nervous because Kim started talking about the conditions. Kim said that along with the requested $1 billion compensation, he wants 100 to do his best to cover up the incident at the gym. The news said that it was discovered that the fire in the Decent High School gym was caused by a gas explosion. Then Kim talked about the second condition, which just happened to be that same call. It turned out that Kim received a call from Hondo. Kim's second condition was that 100 be informed in advance of any retaliation. 100 called Kim and said that according to the oath of the awakened one, he must tell Kim all the information about the killers. The black brother continued to attack him with his blades. However, Kim was able to easily dodge his attacks. Suddenly Kim raised his hand to strike. He hit the black brother, but he somehow escaped. The black brother was in the air behind Kim. In an instant he attacked Kim with both hands, but this time the hero was able to dodge. The black brother was shocked because Kim said their nicknames. Kim also said that their specialty is to be sneak attacks using invisibility. Standing right behind him, about to kick the killer, Kim said that as he thought there was nothing outstanding about them, Kim used the predator and said that in the end apparently that's all they can do. Meanwhile, someone from the association was driving somewhere in a car. It was she was talking to someone on the phone and said that she heard that the selection of parties that ends for the hunter exam was over. She said it will bring together up and coming hunters from across the country. Hey, was talking to Chairman Jin and asked him about who he was waiting for. She guessed the chairman generally was probably waiting for S-rank Shinyang back from B. Isn't the chairman was in his office and looked out the window simultaneously talking with Imi. Laughed and said the Chinna laughed and said that she was still as picky as ever. I looked mysteriously out the window. Chairman generally asked her who she was looking forward to. The boy named Shannon Bak Ion replied that chairman generally hasn't heard anything interesting yet. The chairman became interested and asked her about the most interesting thing that he had not heard. Aon said that besides the other S-rank she heard that there was a guy who was personally visited by the deputy director. Go to work. While they were talking, Kim meanwhile defeated 2 assassins. Ion said that it was quite interesting as Kim's skill level. Ion said that Go to you personally checked and made sure the killers were passed out. Kim took off the mask from one of them. Suddenly Kim looked at his palm and surprise and wondered why it was like this. Again Kim tried to use a predator, but the system reported a lack of physical ability. A notification was also received that due to overload the use of the predator was impossible. Some time passed, and the alley in front of Kim's house was quite quiet. The 2 killers were tied up, and in front of them stood 2 employees of the Players Association behind these association employees to come and go to walk. Association employees said that it was not enough that these black and white brothers were annoying the hunters of the association, and now they had descended to high school students. Another association worker asked if they thought these demons were only getting more disgusting. Few turned to him and thanked him for telling him about it. To work also asked if Kim had any idea who was behind the attack. Kim looked at him and thought, but then he looked away and said he didn't know. Habak picked up the phone. He asked whether it was possible that the list of participants had been revealed. He thinks he'll have to call for reinforcements. Kim, looking at him, thought that if he had unnecessarily accused the teeth and group here, instead of hashish up the situation, Kim Woo only have gotten a bunch of problems. Kim tried to use the predator again. He understood that the immediate priority now was not the T-sum group, but that he could not use the predator. Kim tried to use the skill, but the system notified him that he was out of physical capacity and was overloaded. Kan walked down the street and thought that due to a lack of physical capabilities he could not even use his skills. Kim wondered why they were there. Then, he also wondered if he would eventually have to work on improving his abilities. He began to think about how he could improve his abilities. After all, to increase the level of awakening using a predator on monsters, you need a predator. It is also needed to increase the level of awakening by using a predator. On the awakened, Kan put his hand to his chin but seriously Kim argued and asked if there was really only one option that day. Asked and morning Kim came to some building. This building is called Blackhead. As soon as Kim walked in, he was immediately greeted by a girl. Her name is Europe. She welcomed Kim to the best training center and New Korea. Ia smiled joyfully and wanted to ask him what she could do to help him, but suddenly Summer thing confused her. Following Kim was H1, who was very nervous and said that this is Blackhead, in which to register you need to have money strength, and that's it. H1 indignantly asked if Kim really wanted to come here. The hero asked the counter question about why he came here back then. Euro, a surprise to see school children here. Euro was embarrassed. She started talking about how they had a painting center here, but suddenly Kim handed over some kind of card and told her to register 2 people. Kim handed her the thus VIP card. Euro was shocked. She took the card in her hands and began to look at it. Kim asked if that would be enough. While Euro was surprised that it was his VIP card from one of the 4 largest guilds and alchemists, she looked at Cam and began to wonder where he got this call art from, but suddenly she assumed that he was a relative of a high-ranking hunter. Bureau began to get nervous and sweat because she understood that if she just made the payment and something went wrong, there might be problems. She wondered what she should do at that moment. Some pumped-up man appeared behind her and began shouting that, "Miss, you're seen to have a dilemma." This red-haired man with a mohawk turned to Hammond, calling him a kid, said that this is not a place where you can enter just by paying money. Euro was shocked that the strongest Mr. Han Paul came out to them. This man is a B-ranked trainer who is not a hunter but hold the title of rookie killer and has a muscle strengthening skill. Each Wang began to shout that this was an incredibly cool name, and the strongest began to pose, while Kame at that moment felt awkward because he moreover did not appreciate the name of the strongest and thought that he was completely crazy. The men working out in the gym looked at Mr. Kent all and said that he had picked on them to call, continuing to pose. Ask him if he saw how everyone trembled when they heard the name of the strongest. Suddenly Kim interrupted him and asked what this weak brat was blathering about. The smile suddenly disappeared from Kent or face, and he looked at Kim seriously. H. Wang and the Euro were scared because it was too harsh and rude on Kim's part. Cancel. Ask him how dare he say that he is stronger than Cancel. The hero invited him to bet the loser would pay a membership fee for 1 year. Came to laugh furiously and started shouting that Kim was completely out of touch. Suddenly Kim and Can Call moved somewhere. This place was strewn with sharp rocks. Council said that Kim should prove that he is stronger. It turned out that they were sitting in chairs, and in front of their eyes were virtual reality glasses. There were also spectators there who watched all this. Each Wang worldly wondered what it was. Your explained that this is a virtual training program, a virtual porter. Virtual porter is a competitive or out where you have to carry maximum weight, defeat the maximum number of B-class monsters, and get to your destination in the shortest possible time, and a virtual reality that is completely identical to the Abyss. According to Europe, when it comes to fighting for superiority in a training center, this is the most common way. However, according to her own words, this is to disadvantages for the up-on into the strongest. Cantel smiled slyly and left the strongest one swung his hand to hit the monster. At the same time he called him a brat and asked him how he dared to argue with the strongest. Cantel hit the monster and killed it while using his muscle enlargement skill. He then jumped into the air shouting that this was a skill that was perfect for a virtual porter. Can Call me managed to defeat several monsters. He reported that moreover the way he can lift his on a completely different level. He wanted to say that he could easily defeat Camp, but suddenly something shocked him and he turned around. Hansel saw that Hank easily dealt with a large number of monsters and was ahead of him than 3 monstrous that and Kim's way. However, Kim killed them with 1 blow and ran on Kim. crouched down to push himself harder off the ground. There were many monsters on his way that were going to attack him. Kim jumped up and killed them all with his foot. Kim's eyes sparkled a violet, or raging around him. The monsters below looked at Kim in shock. Kim to watch this Kim made and 999 combo. He was absolutely shocked by this. Kim exhaled and said that he had only planned the visit for 30 days anyway. Wag meanwhile was almost crying and holding a sign in his hands that said that they believe in Kim. The hero said that it must be because of the maximum weight and the training went well. Kim standing in front of Grant Wei all asked if his name was the strongest. Kim, as if mocking, said that the argument was difficult. An inscription appeared above Can. I'm saying that he had won. The hero told went all to pay and get lost. Some time passed. A helicopter was flying over the stadium. Reporters said that 30 days had passed since the announcement of changes in the hunter exam, and this long awaited. They had finally arrived. This day's the day of the hunter test. A lot of people gathered there. Reporters reported that the hunting association said that since minors were also invited to participate by recommendation, this time people of all ages from all over the country are flocking here to the association's testing center. Then they started listing all the most anticipated hunters. Among them was John Wook, who had no equal in close combat and had a rank. There was also the honor of an excellent combat sense that even S ranks could not do feat. Druid Legal saying, who had a rank. Thunderbolt Chin and Bacchus rank, who has no competitors, and B isn't the one about whom there are rumors that she has the highest score among the est acres. Same level. Rising Star Lim I and S rank. More and more people flocked to the stadium. Reporters reported that a large number of talented people are planning to take part in this exam. Some girl suddenly says that this place is very far away. The girl started crying and saying that if she didn't report again today, she would be fired. This is economics new reporter Kim. She has the ranked typing skill and her goal is to interview and film the hunter exam participants. She was so upset because she was standing at the very end behind a huge crowd of people. Reporter Kim fell to her knees and said that let alone interviewing the participants, she couldn't even take a photo. The reporter was very upset and thought that her life and career were ruined. But at the same time Kim was walking behind her, who was completely dressed in black. The reporter turned around because she heard someone ask why there were so many people here. The reporter was surprised and realized that it was a participant because Kim asked how the participants would then be able to get through. Kim walked past the reporter sitting on the floor. The reporter was very excited. Kim smiled and said that as it may, this is mortal boredom. Currently Kim has a C rank and is a participant in the hunter exam. The reporter reached out to and calling him over asked if he could give her an interview. There were a lot of people walking around the arena. It was noisy. A woman came out and called Kim, saying that the exam starts in a minute. Him chuckled and said that he was almost late due to the sudden interview. Kim smiled and said that even so you should worry about your image in advance. And so Kim entered the hall in which there were a lot of candidates. They were all about to take the exam too. They were in a room. As walls were square panels. Some candidates were very nervous. Suddenly a girl recognized Kim and let out a cry of surprise. Kim also noticed her and was surprised. Lim I looked at him and asked if it was Kim. The hero in response asked her whether the headman was really here. Lim looked at Kim in shock and asked him what happened to his body. Kim replied that he was just practice. A single little. She glanced over him again and wondered if this was really called a little. Lam was so shocked because she heard that Kim had awakened, but they could not imagine that Ken would change so much in a month. Lim remembered something and began nervously asking him about the incident with Lee. However, suddenly the screens turned on and a man addressed them, calling them the youth who would carry the future of the New Korea. A green-haired man with glasses said that this hall was the first round of this test in which future hunters would be selected from among the awakened. He decided to explain the rules of the first round. The man asked them to first look at his chest, namely at the badges with numbers. He explained that it was an exam badge with each one's number engraved on it. The man said that in this exam they need to collect 5. This including their own, that is, if they do not have their own badge, they are immediately eliminated. The man showed 5 fingers and exclaimed that this was the so-called exam badge fight. He also said that the time is limited to 1 hour. As soon as he said this, the floor under the exam participants immediately began to collapse. The man clarified that everything is permitted except murder. The participants began jumping on the cubes. They wondered what was happening, because the entire space of the room began to change. The examiner shouted that the first round of the exam was about to begin. The participants that on different cubes, but gravity acted there in the most strange way because they could even stand on the ceiling and not fall down. Many members immediately targeted Lim while they told her to attack. First, if she didn't want to get beaten, it didn't take long for Lim to persuade her, and she immediately began using her skill. Using her skill, she created a huge block of ice and pushed away all opponents. Meanwhile, several people were watching outside the window. They watched Lemon said that she was a real future star because her skills were great. The man in the suit said that the rest of the test takers did not stand out in any way, because they all surpassed the skills of the previous test participants. The man also started talking about who he was especially looking forward to, and then he looked at one of the participants he was interested in. Shinyan Boka, last rank from Be Awesome. This is a fair-haired guy in glasses, with the number 417 on his badge. The man said that 20 minutes had passed since the test began, not to mention every effective blow. No one can get close to him. The man continued to say that these are truly amazing abilities, and wondered who would be better, Lim Im or Shinbok. Meanwhile, Topic was poking at the screen and watching someone to have stood behind and watch them, thinking that given the test takers' scores their interest was now natural. Topic looked excitedly at the panel window and thought that he had seen a much more interesting figure. He was confident that Haim would easily pass this test. To work happily looked at the panel and wanted him to show them everything, all the power, everything Kim has in the panel. To work saw Kim fighting with another test taker. Suddenly Topic stepped back in shock. He started adding and concern, and asking what it was. It turned out that Kim was fighting against the awakened to rank Han Jong-wook. Han can use the Iron Skin skill. Kim currently has a C rank and uses the Stone Skin skill. To work was scared and wondered if he had misunderstood Kim's skills. He exclaimed that he couldn't believe that he had only been tricked by an awakened, a class person. To exclaim that Kim did not dodge a single blow. To began to realize something, because Kim really did not escape a single blow. Kim, meanwhile, continued to attack on the enemy, hit Kim right in the face. However, Kim did not dodge and deliberately allowed himself to be hit. Blood splashed in all directions, and the stone from Kim's face began to crumble. Kim spat blood from his mouth. At this point, Han called Kim names and asked if he dared to challenge him. Han started shouting that Stone Skin was a perfectly backwards compatible skill with Iron Skin. He added that it is not enough to fight him head-on, and he deliberately throw punches that should have missed. Kim simply replied that Han talks too much. Han was shocked. Monoraids around Kim. He said it made sense. Kim's stamina and charisma were increased by 1 point. Kim jumped up and rushed to the attack again. Even after a month of training, the seal on the Predator was not broken. Kim thinks this means his abilities are still not enough. Han hit Kim again, and Kim's blood was shed again. The hero understood that the way to improve performance through training was to provide the maximum stimulation the body could handle. ILPM thought as he continued to fight that this meant that ultimately training was all about fighting to the limit. Kim swung his hand to hit Hong Kong, and Kim hit each other in the face. The Iron Skin disappeared from Hong's face. Kim knew that his training was not over yet. Kim remained conscious and looked joyfully at his enemy. Hong almost lost consciousness, but before that he said that Kim was a month. Easteron fell to the floor. He wanted to say something else, but he had already lost consciousness. Kim took Han's badge. Kim TMSC rank awakened, currently holds 2 badges. Talc started laughing. He started laughing like a madman and shouting that Kim was of course crazy. Other association staff looked at him and said that the deputy director was quite excited. Another association official said to have seemed more excited about the rising stars. To work happily continued to watch, and he realized that Kim was using this method of training and a massive battle for survival. He mentally exclaimed that this was so bold that it was frightening. Kim, meanwhile, walked calmly around the room to see, watching him do, that this was now a problem. It's all about that. But Kim used up